Hey everybody, thanks for checking in on a Friday night. Of course, the conference semifinals begin on Saturday. I'm not sure how good those games will be. Obviously, the marquee game will be Sunday evening when the Baltimore Ravens visit the Buffalo Bills. But in the meantime, thank you for tuning into this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And let's get this thing going. I reached out on Facebook and asked for some questions that I can address in a mailbag kind of setting to answer your questions. And so let's get right to it. Top fan Joel Elliott asked this question, and it's a good one. Why and when is John Fossil, John Bones Fossil, going to be interviewed for the special teams coordinator position? And Joel goes on to ask about Sorensen, like, no way in heck he can be the guy. Well, yes, absolutely way in heck he can be the guy. That was certainly the feeling talking to one of the high-ranking members of the organization the night that it was decided that Nick Sorensen would be out as 49ers defensive coordinator. 49ers wanted to keep him on staff. And, initially it was thought that the best way of doing that would be a special teams coordinator. Now, can I give you specifics on why Nick Sorensen could be a good special teams coordinator? No, I'm not behind the scenes that much. I'm not involved in the meetings, but I can tell you that Nick Sorensen played a lot of years in the league, 10 years in the NFL as a backup safety, but he was a core special teams guy. So his background has always been on special teams. When he broke into the league as an assistant coach, it was as a special teams assistant coach. And then he does have one season as special teams coordinator. To me, when I think about the 49ers coordinator positions, defense and special teams, I always like to see energy, and what does it mean? Probably not much. Probably the X's and O's stand out. But when I think of probably, one of the better special teams coordinators I've been around was George Stewart back in the day. And he was so excitable on the sideline. And he brought that kind of enthusiasm. And you look at, the two defensive coordinators the 49ers have had who have been really successful and gone on to head coaching jobs. Those guys just exuded energy on the sideline. Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans. Nick Sorensen, to be honest with you, I didn't even know he was out there as defensive coordinator. And it's just, the camera didn't love him. And I didn't often train my binoculars on him. But what I can probably read from that is that, kind of like his press conferences, a very low key, even keel kind of guy. I think 49ers need to kind of ramp up the energy. Does it mean all that much? No. Is it for optics? Probably yes. But just my thoughts there on Sorensen. But anyway, obviously, Kyle Shanahan thinks that Nick Sorensen is a good coach. Talking to a lot of the defensive guys, players, they think that Nick Sorensen is a good coach. So I would still consider Sorensen as the front runner from that job. The fact that they interviewed Chris Tabor tells you that at least Shanahan was opening the door for the possibility of bringing in someone experienced from the outside. I don't think Jed Motkins or Chris Banjo would be the answer there because I do think that with special teams and with defensive coordinator, the 49ers would want to get somebody more experienced. But when you bring up John Fossil, I couldn't agree more. Again, can't tell you what makes John Fossil a great uh, special teams coordinator, but I can tell you just how he is thought of around the league. When I was at the owners' meetings and the new kickoff rule was discussed, it was John Fossil who represented all special teams coordinators around the NFL. Of course, he's been with the Dallas Cowboys since, I believe, 2020. So then the question is, well, what's his contract situation? John Fossil's contract expired with the Cowboys at the same time that Mike McCarthy's contract expired. So he is a free agent. He is available. Have the 49ers talk to him? I don't know. Have they interviewed him formally? At this point, no. But I would say that I'm with you that if if you're intent on making an improvement on special teams, if you at least want to send the signal that you take special teams seriously, then Kyle Shanahan should interview John Fossil for that opening. All right, another top fan, Andrew Schmitz, asked the question: what's more important for the team at pick number 11, defensive tackle slash pass rusher, defensive lineman, or any offensive line position? I will tell you that it's the defensive line because of a number of different reasons that I've talked about already in some videos, but I just think that you generally can't go wrong with defensive line because even if the guy doesn't make the kind of impact you want him to make if you take him with a first round draft pick, still going to get on the field, still going to be a rotational player, still going to have an opportunity to at least find some role for that player to impact the game. I'm not sure that this is a great offensive line draft. So, without question, if you were to rank the needs and where the 49ers need somebody, not saying that it's going to be, the defensive line, but to me, it's logical. Um, in my next mock draft, I very well might have the 49ers taking Tyler Warren, the outstanding tight end from Penn State. I think that would be a splash pick. I think that the 49ers could find a way to really help or to aid that offense for him to be part of something with a tandem of him and George Kittle. I also think Tyler Warren is a touchdown catching guy. Add him with Kittle for a lot of two tight end sets. Um, we'll see what the future holds for Kyle Juszczyk. Will he be back with the team? 49ers basically gave him a take this pay cut or else ultimatum last year. So if they did that last year, I'm not sure they won't do that again this year. So it's certainly no guarantee that Juszczyk will be on the team. 49ers struggled for most of the season in the red zone. They improved as the year went on, but I just kind of think back to what Chris Furster, the offensive line coach, run game coordinator, said is that his preference would always to be take somebody who can make plays with the ball in their hand, unless there's a special guy there available on the offensive line. And that leads to another question I saw from my old buddy Mike Gieser. Mike asked, um, who will be the first offensive lineman replaced next season? So this year, that offensive lineman will be Aaron Banks. I think I would be absolutely shocked if Aaron Banks returns to the team. I think that he will hit the open market. He will get a lot more money from some team than the 49ers are willing to pay to retain him. I think some team will see that he's a better fit for their system than for the 49ers. And so the 49ers more than likely will be looking for a new left guard to replace Aaron Banks. So does that come from on the team? Here's one thing I'm going to just warn everybody about. Don't expect the 49ers to go out and pay big money for an offensive lineman to step into the starting lineup. The 49ers develop their offensive linemen generally. Rarely does a guy come out of nowhere. I mean, when they signed John Feliciano, yes, he ended up starting, but he was a backup. Dominic Pooney certainly wasn't thought to be a starter initially when they drafted him in the third round, just like Aaron Banks wasn't a starter initially as a second round pick. I mean, if you're looking for expecting wholesale changes on the 49ers offensive line, I'm just not sure that this is going to be a good offseason for you. Now, they do have some options at center with Matt Hennessy, with Drake Nugent, but it's Jake Brendel's job to lose. I'm just saying, don't kill the messenger. I just think that it's a lot easier said than done because every team out there, virtually every team out there, is looking to improve their offensive line. Case in point, look at the Minnesota Vikings. Look at the LA Chargers. The Vikings were, what were they? 14-3 in the regular season, and look how they got devoured by the Los Angeles Rams. Look at how Justin Herbert struggled in the first round playoff game. And that's a team, the Chargers, that devoted a lot of resources to improving their offensive line. So I'm just telling you that, uh, again, if you're expecting wholesale changes on the 49ers offensive line this offseason, you're probably going to be disappointed. Okay, what do we got here? Um, Top fan. Uh, Omarcito wants to know trade for Miles Garrett. Don't see it. Don't know how the 49ers could have that capital to trade for him and then inherit that big contract. And also, why would the Browns get rid of Miles Garrett? So don't see that one. Here we got a question. What are the 49ers, or what are the chances 49ers trade a contract player for another first round draft pick? Again, I don't see it. I don't know who it'd be. I don't know who they would be able to trade to get a first round draft pick. So again, sorry, hate to be a wet blanket, but just trying to keep it real here, folks. Eric asks, who's more likely to become defensive coordinator? That would be Robert Saleh, and I am basing that on this very fact. After the 49ers had their end of season press conference, that was on Wednesday. On Thursday, they interviewed Robert Saleh. They interviewed Deshae Townsend, who's the defensive passing game coordinator for the Lions, also defensive backs. There's no way the 49ers are going to hire a first-time defensive coordinator to replace Nick Sorensen. It's got to be someone proven. Robert Saleh is the guy. And the 49ers have very clearly made it known that Robert Saleh is the guy because they haven't been officially associated with any other defensive coordinator candidate. They haven't interviewed anybody else. They've satisfied the requirements of the Rooney Rule. Robert Saleh is the only candidate, true candidate, that they have interviewed. So now the waiting game is this. Robert Saleh knows exactly where the 49ers stand as far as hiring him to be defensive coordinator. Now Saleh is going through the process of interviewing with the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Cowboys. It is my belief as I sit here in front of you that if Robert Saleh is not named head coach of one of those three spots, then he will be the 49ers defensive coordinator. Follow-up question, most likely DC if it isn't Saleh. In my mind, it's Jeff Ulbrich. Again, the 49ers have talked to people, defensive coordinator candidates, but that's all it's been is talk. No offers, no interviews have been set up. No interviews have been conducted. But just based on last year, when the 49ers were in the market for a defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich was at or near the top of their list. There were some things going on there, and ultimately the Jets declined the 49ers permission to talk to Jeff Ulbrich. But I'm fairly certain that he would come back to the 49ers in a heartbeat if given that opportunity. Here's a question. Do you think Shanahan allowing Kubiak to do the play calls during the last game is a signal he might be giving up that responsibility upon the promotion of Kubiak? I'll say the expected promotion of Kubiak to offensive coordinator. The answer to that is absolutely not. Kyle Shanahan will continue in that role as the main offensive coach. He is, in fact, he's the offensive coordinator. He's the play caller. There's input and everybody has a voice, but Shanahan's strength is, what got him hired was his ability to run an offense, the offense itself. Heck, there's been a book written about that offense. And if you haven't read Mike Silver's book, The Why is Everything, I recommend checking that out. But no, Shanahan is the play caller. He always will be the play caller as long as he's with the 49ers, unless at some point, like when his dad gave him play calling duties, maybe Kyle gives his son play calling duties in 25 years. Maybe not that long. So anyway, no, Kyle Shanahan will continue the play calling duties. He will be the one who has the direct radio communication into the helmet of Brock Purdy. And he said his plan. He would love for Brock Purdy to be his quarterback as long as he is the head coach of the 49ers. Here's a question. Is Christian McCaffrey cooked for good? I don't think so. Maybe that's overly optimistic, but from what I understand, Christian McCaffrey, when he returned to the field, was having no issues with the Achilles. And finally, in that game in Buffalo, he looked like it. He was having himself one heck of a game. He looked to be on his way to a long touchdown run, instead gets tripped up, lands on his knee, sustains the posterior cruciate ligament injury, non-surgical, but that knocked him out for the season. It wasn't the Achilles, so I don't believe that Christian McCaffrey is cooked for good. Difficult to predict injuries, but I think the 49ers are very optimistic, and I think McCaffrey is optimistic that he still has very good days ahead of him. Who are we looking at for kicker in 2025? Okay, I would be shocked, and it would be a bad mistake for the 49ers to not have some competition, like legitimate competition for Jake Moody. Last year, they brought in Matthew Wright. They brought in Anders Carlson. That's when Moody was hurt. And then when Moody and Wright were hurt, it was Carlson. Those guys ended the season kicking for teams. They both had pretty good years. Could one of those two guys be back in training camp to compete with Jake Moody? Absolutely. I'm going to give you a name of a guy, though. He kind of bounced around his rookie season. He went undrafted in 2024, but he'll be 26 years old. So he has that going for him, at least some experience. He kicked at South Florida. He kicked at Notre Dame. His name is Spencer Schrader. And he kicked 4 games with Indy, the Jets, and Kansas City due to injuries. He was 5 for 5 on field goal attempts. He was 9 for 9 on extra points. While he was at Notre Dame, he kicked a 54-yarder to win a game. And then, maybe more importantly, maybe not more importantly, but something to be noted, when he kicked off last year in the NFL, he was 94.4% on touchbacks. So he has a strong leg. Watch for somebody like him. I'm throwing out the name Spencer Schrader to compete with Jake Moody. Um, Here's a question about the draft. Any chance to trade up for Abdul Carter? No, I don't think so. I think Abdul Carter's a top 5 pick. 49ers have the 11th pick. I think there would be more of an opportunity for the 49ers to trade back and get more picks, and then you can move her up, gives you some more flexibility. But I don't think there's any chance that they would trade up to 4 or 5 to get the edge rusher, Abdul Carter. And then let's see, maybe this is kind of an overlap. Could you see that the D line was very light? Most could see that the D line was very light going into the season. Why didn't they address the D line in the offseason or with a midseason trade? I'm not sure I saw that. They did add a lot of guys in free agency. The way they added guys was different. It wasn't through the draft. That's where, looking back on it, they took Pearsall, they took Renardo Green, they took Dominic Pooney, they took Malik Mustafa, they took Tatum Bethune, and others, a couple offensive linemen, or at least, another offensive line, Jared Kingston. So um, I think by mid-season, the one trade they made was for a defensive lineman. That was when they started getting the injury bug, and they brought in Khalil Davis, not Kalia Davis. So they had Kalia Davis and Khalil Davis. But, by that point, the injuries, Drake Jackson out for the year. And I don't know that they anticipated that when training camp opened. I don't think they anticipated that during the draft. Of course, Javon Hargrave, that was a huge blow, losing him. Yetur Gross-Matos had some injuries, all the other injuries. So why didn't they? Because I don't think that, well, I know they didn't believe that they were in a position to make a trade. Maybe part of it was they weren't fully convinced that they needed a trade, that all it would take would be a trade to help them get back in the mix last season. So I would think, though, that this offseason, like I mentioned, defensive line at the top of the list. But I think the way to do that is through the draft, not through free agency. So, hey, thanks for tuning in to this Q&A. The questions were great on Facebook, and if you have more questions, just leave them below in the comments section here on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and well, that is it for now.